77928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Stumbling down the road with Bridgette Lynn Dolgoff as she carries stones, digs holes, and wields her shovels on her way.
That's really
this
weird.
This road is the real.
Of course, I am here, but I don't know really where I'm at. Oh, that's
clear,
right, Studio A. Here he's digging holes and doing whatever. That's right. I'm trying. Oh, Bridgette, where art thou? She's out there gardening. Things are just really interesting with the way the Skype's working out these last couple days.
This journey has not been a seated event.
Let's hope I don't lose
as Bridgette
this.
Walks, runs, stumbles, carries, digs, drags, laughs, fights, sings, prays, dances, kicks,
I kind of did over.
And oftentimes falls.
Okay, let's see. We'll see if I can do this again, if I can grab my guest. Okay. So you are not on call. Well, that just doesn't make any sense. Whoops. Oh, just is. We'll see what happens. Oh, life is good. Very, very good. Oh my gosh. This is too funny. Oh, goodness. Welcome, one and all. Remember, we are here at revolution.radio, freedomslips.com. It is Saturday, May 4th, 2019. Yeah. How art thou, people? So my guest, I haven't seen him. He might show back up. He might not. I don't know. We were talking earlier, so hey. I guess those solar flares are acting up more than what we thought. Yes. Not that we intend them to, but hey. It is what it is, whatever. Yep. 4 years ago today, there is no black versus white. There is no Republican versus Democrat. There is no gay versus straight. There is no atheist versus fanatic. There is no rich versus poor. There is no left versus right. There is only us against them. The labels which we identify ourselves and others only keep us divided and fighting each other instead of fighting back.
Time out.
Thank you. Ah!
This is Dr. Lenny Thyme. You are on building glass houses and throwing stones. Sounds like what our society's doing these days, isn't it? Or are they building grass houses and stowing thrones?
No, they would be actually lighting torches.
Sometimes we need it. We need a whole new way It doesn't work the old way anymore.
No, that's true. Oh, I mean, it is so true. And I didn't introduce myself in case nobody knows my voice here. I mean, that'd be kind of interesting. But anyway, I'm the feral,
right?
The feral hippie. What?
You're Bridgette Lindolgoff, right?
No, I'm the feral hippie.
Hippy.
I know,
Miss
Radler. She was one of my favorite, though, in Saturday Night Live. Gilda Radler. She was. Yep, and they got her first with that fast-acting cancer.
Yeah,
Pardon?
You can change her name and call her Gilda Radler.
Well, okay. Well, it's not.
Anything.
Where are you located? Because you're coming in and out.
Yeah, Skype. I went to answer the phone call and it decided not to let me. And then when I did answer it, I was in complete silence. So who knows? Ever since Microsoft bought Skype, it's been an adventure, hasn't it?
Oh, they got the computers now, too. Supposedly all the Windows 7's going to be infiltrated by a new Microsoft or whatever they want you to have instead of what you want to have. So.
Do they still have Windows 7? I thought they were up to Windows 10.
They're at Windows 10, but I have a 7 on my Dell, and I have an 8 on my Asus. So.
And do they still support 7 and 8?
So far.
Yeah, I'm never sure anymore. I think we should unsupport everybody. But then we need some sort of floor of support that everybody is supported on. But we could redo the monetary system completely and never lose anything because the whole thing is messed up as it is.
But that's only by the way that the system of the belief works, that it's in their favor when it's really not in our favor.
Well, it seems to me that they tell us that the Declaration of Independence is this long document when it could be as simple as we are independent. Okay, now where do we go from here?
Well, the next step was the Bill of Rights, right?
You have the right to be wrong.
Well, you should have the right to be ignorant because that's how they catch us, by making all these hidden laws. And because you're ignorant of them, they get to catch you in them.
I'm not bound to their system.
Yeah,
I don't follow their laws. I don't go advertising that I don't follow their laws. And I don't really do anything that would be considered outside the law by me. But I don't recognize that they have authority to come to my property and enforce anything upon me.
No, they shouldn't.
No, and it makes sense that we should have a different system, but I mean, we'd really have to do something different. But why do we seem married to this idea of distributing ourselves by geographic distribution based on where we happen to be located? Why don't we make a system based on what our professional experience is and have so many doctors, so many lawyers, so many scientists, so many housewives, and every profession represented in a Congress instead of doing it by where you happen to be located in a state?
But it's a state of affairs or a state like United States, which
more of a state of confusion. But I meant, we don't need the United States. We need a different way of apportioning voting because it doesn't work the way it's supposed to work. And right now, it's an oligarchy. And I didn't pay for my elected servants to be bossing me around, so there's a problem here.
Yeah. Misguided, misdiagnosed thing called society.
Yep. And so let's write off the society and form another one.
Well, I'm living in my society. And people can come or not. I don't care.
Your society is high society because anytime it's not, you'll fire up another bowl.
That's right. Darn tootin'. Everybody flick your pig. You got it? It's time to smoke it. But I cooked with it the other day, so shh.
If I was on your show, we'd be coming up on 11:11, and it would be time to flick my pig. But since this is Bridgette's show, it's only 10:11.
Yeah, but it'll be 1:11 my time, so
Well, 11:11 and 4:20 are the two times a day I always try and light up. And it's funny, you're almost conditioned to doing it when you try and do it that way. I'll find that it's 5 after 11 and I'm out in the field doing something, and I'm suddenly called back to come back to my place where I've got my stash so I can take a hit.
Yeah. Mother Nature's telling you. Yeah. I saw a dragonfly yesterday. That was really cool.
Dragonflies are neat. It's a little early for them, but we get lots of them in all different colors.
Well, I'm just hoping, because last year I was lucky if I only saw one. So I really am aware, and I want to see life come back. So it excites me when I get to see that. I haven't seen a honeybee yet, but
one of the things I used to do in a former lifestyle was I used to go out into the streams and collect the bugs that would hatch into dragonflies and stoneflies and mayflies.
Mm-hmm.
And by counting the bugs that were in a certain portion of a stream, we were able to get an idea of how polluted or not polluted that stream was. If you found a lot of bugs like black fly larvae, then you knew it was a pretty bad stream for upkeep. But the more mayflies and stoneflies there were, and dragonflies, the more healthy your stream was.
Interesting.
And so we get into waders, and we taught a bunch of high school students how to do this so that they could be of service to their communities. And we'd put them in waders, and they'd get a D-framed net, and
like a butterfly net?
Yeah, but a lot stronger, and because you're in running water in that.
Right.
And essentially take the 1 foot space in front of where the net is, and the D means that you got a flat surface to lay on the bottom. And so there was a grid that we had marked out as to where in the river you went to collect these bugs. And for a foot in front of the net, you took all the rocks and everything in the river and scooped it up into the net. And of course it's a net, so all the water rushes through. And then you pour all those rocks into a bucket, and then you go to another place. And you do this 8 times in different locations in the river.
Right.
And that's what you collected your sample. Then we brought the samples over to the side and dusted all the big rocks off from all the bugs that were on it and threw them back into the river, so that we'd end up with a bucket of bugs and dendritis, but all the rocks were pretty much left behind. You got some little ones in that. And then we'd go back to the school or to the zoo, and we'd sit at tables and we'd pick the bugs out from the dendritis. And you'd be amazed at how well bugs are good at hiding, even in samples where you can see everything.
Right.
But then identify the bugs and got to count which types of bugs were there and how many, and it was a pretty good class. We did it at the zoo, and we primarily had 8th and 9th graders that were invited to work with us. And so that by the time they became juniors and seniors in high school, they were going out with some of the scientists and collecting real samples that mattered. And so it was a good way of educating bright children to be part of the system. But then they passed this law called No Child Left Behind.
Oh, man,
I'll have called it No Child Gets Ahead, because it killed all programs like the ones we were doing.
They started that when my 20-year-old was in kindergarten, and I drew a picture of a hand shooting a bird at him. Of course, I didn't put my name on it, but
yeah,
it was bad. It was just like, oh my gosh. Oh, it's just like the standards, they used to think white male was the prominent one, but now you have to hire either a female or another type of human being over that white male. And then they have something out there now that the whites should be dead. It's like they've already been killed. Even though they might be still breathing, they've destroyed all the equality that there could have been anywhere, because you should get picked on your talents. What do you call them? Expertises thingies.
But that's because they treat us as human resources, and we should reject those sort of labels.
Well, it's a slavery.
It is. And it's debt slavery, really, to the almighty dollar, but there's no system outside of the way it is. And they'll even, if you can't work in the system, they'll give you money to be in the system, but they won't let us develop a new system that works better. But the New Way is a radio show on Steampunk Radio that I host for 2 hours every weekday morning. And we're talking about different ways that we can change the way we do things to be better than the way they're currently done.
Right.
And it's not something where we're going to get to there from here. We're not. But the idea of just coming up with different ways of constructs means we're thinking about it so that other people who do have ways that can be gotten to from here have some room to develop them. So the genre is called crypto fiction, and we tell the truth, but we're allowed to embellish the stories. And so when I'm in my character talking on the radio as part of this show, the character is a scientist who has an ego like a scientist, but has gotten the idea that scientism is 100% wrong, which is like saying scientists are 100% right. And so I play the character off as a big buffoon, and sometimes people aren't in on the jokes, start taking them seriously and start trying to explain how the system works. But the whole idea is that we have to assume the system doesn't work, isn't there, and come up with mechanisms of replacement for things going on.
Yeah, but the whole situation is, a lot of us have known, say like glyphosate, is out and dangerous and killing the life it touches. Well, now they're actually putting it on the mainstream news, because they didn't want to hear about it if I said anything about it. But, if they hear about it on the mainstream news, it must be right. But how late is it? How really late is it?
I saw an episode of the SGT report this week on glyphosate.
Okay.
With a woman named Sophia something. I'll have to send it to you. It's 55 minutes, but it's really good. It talks some serious chemistry, and it just breaks it down to the point where we as people should not accept this product any longer. And the manufacturers and the people complicit with putting this poison out deserve to be hung. But it's not just as bad as killing weeds. They use it to spray on crops as a desiccant to dry things out right before they harvest.
Yes, so we're eating it. Oats, corn, wheat.
Yep. Well, I don't eat most of that stuff anyway.
Even alfalfa is going, yeah, but look, Lenny, we just supposedly, okay, I'm putting, hold on, a quotation marks about supposedly, okay?
Supposedly.
Yes, the main... Okay.
Okay.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. that our whole bread basket that people didn't even recognize commercially, that's what I guess we feed the world with, right? And it's all been under industrial use, as what you're saying, and how they have processed it and how they've been taught to process it, even the other farmers, the independent farmers. And that the glyphosate, I mean, it's been around since forever. It's got to be 40 years. And you're right. It kills off all the mitochondria of the earth. So it's worse than deadly. And that the desiccant is because it dries out faster. It's supposed to mean more yield. Okay? So they're not giving us anything nutritional. And say like cotton, we're wearing glyphosate. Do you know how many products that we use that are glyphosated that we don't even recognize in clothing and things like that? This stuff has it. Oh, it's like the fluoride. Where'd the skull and bones go? They must have gone to a party somewhere because those things should have been the most adamant. Oh, but they take off pyrethrum, and that is one of the safest organic flippin' weed or herbicides that you could use. You could, as long as the inner ingredients weren't in there, you could drink it because it makes a great tea. It's a feverfew. I mean, there were so many good basic nurturing ways to do this, but no. We had to Dow Corporation and all the rest of them MFers that thought profits and murder is what's supposed to be happening. Oh, I'm pissed about it, Lenny, big time. Go ahead.
Yeah, the better living through chemistry slogan of death from the 1960s is an embarrassment for me to call myself a chemist anymore. It's like, why would I want to associate with these companies? But it's gotten to the point where they don't teach chemistry properly in schools, so that people tend to be afraid of it, and they make chemicals off limits because they're controlling methamphetamine abuse, and you can't get a lot of the chemicals that used to be commonplace for everybody to have around their house.
Right.
But you certainly can get your Clorox bleaches and your ammonias and stuff that are dangerous enough to kill you.
Even by just breathing it.
Yeah, if you mix chemicals wrong, you don't tend to have a second chance. And sometimes, well, chemists are the third least long-lived profession out there.
Sure.
Because you don't get a lot of chances. If you make a mistake, you usually end up killing yourself, especially if you're on the cutting edge. So I've managed to avoid making mistakes in chemistry. I've made some, but I haven't managed to kill myself off yet. Although now, my understanding, maybe I did kill myself off on certain worlds, and it just didn't manifest in my consciousness. I don't know. Things work strangely.
Yes, there are missing moments.
I just dropped a video for you here in the live Skype room. And if you want to send that out to the chat room, they might appreciate it.
Okay. Huh, that was interesting. It wasn't showing we were on, and now it's showing we are on.
I no longer pay any attention to what Skype shows. If I'm talking to you and I can hear you, we're on.
Right. Well, I'd like to make sure we're at the station. The Grim Reaper glyphosate.
Yep, that's the one.
Yes, it is. Yep, and I dealt with the horticultural stuff. And basically, it's just very, very sad. It's been a male-oriented establishment. Big time.
I think stupidity doesn't depend on sex. that males and females are both equally as stupid when it comes to things like use of glyphosate?
No, what I was considering is that the men have had the reins for so long that they have not incorporated the women into doing the nurturing part, because men are just literally, if you've ever read The Naked Ape, one of the best books I ever read, basically they're here to take apart and terrorize things. That's why they all get off on mowing lawns and stuff. But it's just a general part of the separation. I'm not saying we're all equal or not equal. I'm just saying those are the common left, right, male, female energies. Because I've seen nurturing men that are just great. But then we're going to get into astrological talking, because I know we're more than just a sex. You know. So.
I think I need to take a few puffs.
Yeah, I'm normally not till afternoon, but that's okay. Depends on the day. I just watched somebody weed eat all the echinacea out of the garden, and I just almost started crying. Because people don't realize spring, and things are not done springing yet. And I don't know what they'll do if they're cut down to the ground.
Well, you'll find out soon enough, won't you?
Oh, and just, I'm talking a 6 square foot area. And nothing is going in there because it's a direct bed in front of the house.
What were they saying?
They weren't. He was pulling weeds and marjoram out of the garden until he said, "Oh, I smell something." And I said to him, "You're pulling out marjoram." And he's like, "What?" Because he knew about the sage, to leave the sage.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have square footage of those growing. But yeah, I'm just like, oh my gosh. Very sad. Once the man has to get... I've never seen a woman enjoy riding a lawnmower like men do.
I don't enjoy riding a lawnmower.
Well, you don't know the guys around here. There's 5 houses on the block, and they're each one have their own mower. I mean, what a waste. What an established social keeping up with the Joneses shit. You know, a female would pay somebody to do it. And at least you're helping employ somebody, you know what I mean? I
don't think I like the direction this show is taking today.
Really? Why is that?
Why are you picking on males?
Well, I'm just saying what I witnessed.
Oh,
I'm not really picking on males. I mean, hell, I just had a great couple hugs from one. I'm not unhappy with males. In the least. But it's the stereotype of societies and indoctrination kind of thing. It's like when I'm saying, and I go to a bar, right? And a guy wants to sit and talk to me. One of the first things I'd ask them is, how many controllers do you own? TV, stereo, lights, who knows? Because there's a lot of controllers out there for a lot of different things, right? Because if all they give into is the idea how they have at their hands reach control, how do you have a relationship with a human being that's their concept of existence? That's like people who play video games and that. Okay, I can see a little bit of maybe changing character because I liked Pac-Man and pinball machines, but not where I'm supposed to be something that I'm not. I have better things to do with my time, you know what I mean? So society is actually maybe not as much as me because I like everybody equally. So, but I think that's been our programming, Lenny. Haven't you seen that?
No, I don't like people. I don't hang out with them at all. They're rather rude and obnoxious.
Are they usually male?
I don't know.
Oh, that's
I'd
right.
say that 50% are female.
Okay, I'll get that equivalent.
I'm equal. I don't discriminate. I don't hang out with people very much at all. And the people I do hang out with have to work to get me to hang out with them. Because I out in the wilderness in the middle of nowhere, very deliberately so I don't have to put up with the ways of people.
Right. Lucky you. Yeah.
Up with Izzy the Wonder Dog and the two cats. If I want to go down to the river at any given time, as long as the weather's okay, all I have to do is walk about a quarter mile. Mm-hmm. And I go outside. I appreciate what's outside. When I'm inside, I'm in a trailer talking to my electronics.
Right.
And I really, really weird because we never even touched the screen of a television when we were growing up. If you touched the screen, your parents would freak out about fingerprints or something. But it was all part of the programming. So when they invented touchscreen to be part of the programming, I was already out of the system. So 2015 coming back into a world that operates on touchscreens is like really, really freaked me out.
Right.
I don't want a smartphone. I don't want anything that claims it's smart. That's really part of the problem. If we got rid of 5G and everything's smart, we'd be a much better world. And this Internet of Things, I don't want an Internet of Things. We have too many labels on things. Let's share what we have, enjoy each other's company, and not be so possessive about these things that we label. Right? Uh-oh.
I was muted. No. I was in a cough, so I decided to mute instead of getting in your way because we were talking there. Isn't that gorgeous? Do you see that picture?
Oh, yeah. Lion's manes are really cool. I've got... I wonder if I can find some of the pictures. My tablet doesn't like to show me pictures because it thinks it's saving its energy in that mode. Uh-huh. And so when I go to get my media, if I haven't looked at it in the last 2 days, it doesn't show it to me. And I don't know how this stuff works. But sometimes it works just like it works, and sometimes it doesn't work at all. But this is what I found the other day when I was looking in my compost pile, and here it comes. It is an agaricus, which is the same type of mushroom as you might find in the store as the button mushrooms when they grow out a little bigger.
Okay, what is that handled thing there?
That's That's my microphone that I use when I'm on the radio. It's a handheld mic. The black part there is where my hand goes, and then I talk into the silver part. And it plugs right to my computer, which everything is setting on. And I apologize for the direction of the sunlight not being compensated, but I was more interested in seeing that I had something that referenced the size of actually how big those mushrooms had gotten.
So they're like 4 inches.
Yeah.
Neat. Way cool.
And so this time of year...
And it's called what?
Agaricus.
Okay, I'm trying to see. I'm taking ashwagandha. Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Agaricus, agaricus. Mm-hmm. But they're the same breed as the button mushrooms that most people buy in the grocery store.
Oh.
They're just grown bigger. They're not harvested as buttons.
Neat.
It was actually a nice cluster. I have a picture of the cluster somewhere else, but it was easy enough to grab these. But then yesterday I was out and I picked a whole bunch of oysters also. And they had been there for a while. They were pre-dried on the tree, so all I had to do was break them off and throw them in my bag. And they will hydrate very nicely in stews and soups and things like that.
Uh-huh.
Yesterday, I took some beans to soak, and they've been soaking overnight. So after the show, I'm going to go out, pick some mushrooms, or maybe just use the ones I picked yesterday. Since they're already dried, there's no urgency of using them.
Right.
But I can go out and look for more see what I can find, and then if I don't come back with more good fresh mushrooms, then I'll use the pre-dried ones.
Right. Yeah, almost like
amazing. And anybody who's interested in mushrooms should look up a gentleman named Paul Stamets.
Mm-hmm. The man who he made a hat out of it, didn't he?
Amongst other things.
I wrote a story when I was tripping, doing mushrooms, and it was called The Adventures, they're The Explorers. And the first thing that came into my mind was the mushrooms were made into a hat and clothing because there was these little people called scooples who lived. Yeah, they were way far back. And
I don't have any scruples. I'll do anything.
And this giant was out to kill them all with a dragon, but there was this one mushroom that dragon and giant should not have gotten a hold of, and they did, so they died. So that's why we lost all our dinosaurs and giants on this planet, was because of a mushroom. And
are you sure it wasn't the Smurfs' fault?
No, this was well before the Smurfs. I wrote this in 1975. And
before the Smurfs?
Yeah. But I know that every time I tripped, a story came to my mind, which to me was history, true history.
And you were tripping in 1975? You were 17 years old.
So I've been smoking cannabis since I was 11. I didn't have parental guidance for my whole junior high school years. And if law would have known that, but they didn't care. It didn't matter because I was at school every day. There was no issues, no problems, and no parentals living in the house for 3 years.
Yeah, my older son went independent when he was a sophomore in high school because that was when my family was breaking up, and he found it easier to be independent than to take the side of either me or my wife, which was a good thing for him.
Right.
And he was able to move in with some friends which allowed him to go to school at the same high school that he had started at, because otherwise he would have had to move with one of us, and neither of us were sticking around.
Right.
So once they took the house and we didn't have a place to go, you just go where you can go. And
yep.
And took different pathways. And my younger son went with my wife. My older son went out on his own with some friends of mine. And I went and began my journeys of the world to see if there was actually a community out there that functioned as a community. And I'm convinced there's not.
No, you have to have a community of one.
That's it. And you have to build that community of one into a community of two enough times so that you have a circle of influence with enough people that your one becomes a one of a group of people, and the people who you represent because they're your friends and you like them and you can work with them.
Yeah, but Lenny, we go through so many different cliques of those natures. Like attracts like, and we're always growing, and the magnetism is what creates the conditions of exposures. And until we recognize our own selves, and this is what I say to my friend, when we choose love instead of fear, the whole world changes, because that's the magnetism that we are missing, that we think we need and looking for, but we're not asking for it. And so until we ask for it and live it and explore more, the universe is full of synchronicities and miracles and so many other situations that happen when you can just live in the realm of unconditional love instead of figuring you got to coexist in fear. Because then you go to the hard drugs, then you go to the alcohol, then you go into abuses and things like that, because you're a slave, and your spirit, heart, and soul, your body, mind, and spirit, doesn't want to be there because it knows it's not its direct prime, what do you call it, directive. It's not its prime directive to be here and to have to constantly be under fear and duress.
Which is why I am a hermit on 37 acres and don't deal
I'm jealous. I know. Boy, I'm just your shroom experiences. I do. I've always had fetishes. We used to go to the cow pastures right early in the morning before the sun comes up. I bet we met a Sasquatch once or twice, and that's before they figured out a lot. We were all going to the cow pastures.
Yeah,
and they
no,
started.
I was in the cow pasture a month ago collecting, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, but back in Florida, honey, they put in where they put the seed, or they sprayed the seed with something, or whatever they sprayed. They sprayed something to kill the psilocybin spores in the food. From the food. So.
You see, all the spores, all the molds, all the mosses and mildews and different things all have their biological roles, or they would not have survived as being biological entities this long. And so for us to routinely go out and spray other biologicals with stuff is declaring war on ourselves, because we're made up of those biologicals. So while we're busy spending our time searching for extraterrestrial intelligent life in outer space, it's all here within the top 6 inches of the ground. It's just at scales that we think are so small they can't be intelligent. And they look at us and say, oh, those big people, we got to get rid of them because they're causing all the problems we have on Earth with their industrial disease, spraying chemtrails and spilling oil into the oceans and sinking it instead of cleaning it up, or using the rivers as sewers, or cutting down the forests for wood when they could be growing hemp for wood. There's all sorts of things that they do, but they is we and we are they, and we are all together. See how they run like pigs from a gun? See how they run. I'm crying.
Yeah.
Got to get the Beatles lyrics in somewhere.
Yeah, but that's just too factual. I probably know every Beatles song.
Well, let me take you down, because I'm going to Strawberry Fields.
Forever.
So there's nothing to get hung about.
Strawberry
Fields forever. This is easy with the eyes closed. I mean, really, they do talk about everything we're talking about, but that's the theme of music of the 70s. And when we were growing up, they were telling everything we need to know, but it was presented as acid rock. And you were really into it. I was really out of it. But I got my time after I turned 18, went to college, and got introduced to marijuana in a way that I didn't stop smoking for the next 8 years. But it took a number of different times to try it before I actually caught on to what I was supposed to feel, because it was kind of different. But I learned that marijuana healed me of certain afflictions early on, and that if I didn't announce how much I was smoking, but just smoked by myself, I felt a lot better. And I never got on to any of the pharmaceutical drugs that they tried to push on people. And back when I was young, the push wasn't as hard as it is now, whereas you go to a doctor now and the doctor says, here, take this drug. And if you don't like it, you tell them, no, I want the purple pill. I saw it on TV. And they say, okay, and they write you a script for the purple pill. It doesn't matter. You still got a script.
I have to say that pharmaceuticals did save my life, because I was chemically induced with pneumonia, basically. I had like 3% oxygen, because I was dumb enough to be in an enclosed area with chemicals. And doctor thought I was walking around with walking pneumonia. But during that time, I was actually inducing my own harm because my holistic, organic, herbal remedies do not cut the synthetic chemical realities. So from my heat treatment, if it was an organic virus, bug, or whatever's earthly affecting you, would have taken care of it. But it didn't. I had to learn that, and I learned the hard way because I was almost dead. And took one cold treatment in the hospital. Everything came out of my lungs, and I was like 90% better. In fact, they said, I can't believe how big your lungs are. Well, anyway, but they're clean. And I've been a smoker for over 30 years. Both. Tobacco and cannabis.
The wacky tobacco.
Yeah.
But you know what? A lot of what they taught us about a lot of different things is just plain wrong. Yeah. And they taught it to us wrong. They made sure we understood it wrong, and they made it so that it all makes sense wrong, so that we'd be satisfied with the explanations and not ever get to what was right.
It's a good thing there's a lot of different kinds of people.
Yeah, and a lot of different types of people have to start talking with each other and quit yelling at each other and being okay with differences of opinion, especially in places where it really doesn't matter, and question all the stories we think we know, because when we get a different spin on the story, we don't have to believe it, but we should at least listen it out and see where it goes before we start correcting the story to what we know. Because unless we have firsthand experience, we're all living with this same understanding of stories. They're not real. And everything from the stories our parents read us, to the television shows we watch, to the movies we see, even to the radio we listen to, it's important for us to discern what the person is saying, separate from whether we believe it or not.
Well, that's the power of belief, though, Lenny, is that behind what you have programmed into your conscious that has no variables, it just doesn't but make it fail. Go ahead.
What do you mean? I'm totally looking at a system that's in total abject failure and saying you as your own person self has to figure it out how you think it works.
Well, right, but without discussion of argument.
We're not arguing.
No, I don't mean you're taking something personal that I don't mean to be putting on you. I'm saying as the group of us. Because you were saying the adamantness doesn't make it right because there's more than one perspective to every issue.
And there is a right perspective. And if people get to right by different pathways, that reinforces that all those pathways are okay to get there. And it's not your pathway or my pathway. We both ended up at the same place.
Yeah.
So we don't have to argue about which pathway we took to get there. We were both here. Move into knowing what we know based on personal experience and the personal experience of other people at human scale without the overlay of all this corporate influence that we've been given all our lives. Right. And to do that, we really have to disbelieve what we believe and test whether it works or not in our world. And if I tell you something doesn't work and you know it does work, just tell me, okay, I believe you, and lie to me and do it the way you know it works, because it's none of my business how you get your things to work. If they work for you, I'm happy they work for you. But if I tell you something that works for me and it doesn't work for you, and I break your paradigm so that now what used to work for you doesn't work for you anymore because I changed the way you think.
Oh, give me a break. Nobody has the right or the power to make that.
That's what I said. Shame on me for doing that.
Oh, for having a conversation. That's not right. Yeah, people take life too personally, Lenny. They really do, because everything's an assumption. I assume, I think, I know. When that's not true. It's not always valid either. Assuming is like, oh my gosh, what a waste of disciplined time. I mean, because
when you're doing science and you're trying to see how one variable affects another variable, you have to hold something constant and see what the changes are. And so if you're holding something constant relative to what's changing, even though you know it's changing, well, then you're making assumptions.
The constant is the state of consciousness, isn't it? By witnessing it, by seeing it.
No, the constant is like if we're going to measure the effect of temperature on different things that go on in our lives, then what we need to do is choose 4 different temperatures: very cold, medium warm, and hot, and set the thermostats to those temperatures and hold temperature constant and see what the changes are in the 4 systems we're looking at, where the only change made is the variable of temperature. So in order to study temperature, you make temperature constant, and therefore it's not a variable.
No, but the degrees that you write down will be variable. Right? I mean, because if you're studying it, aren't you documenting it? Aren't you witnessing what it is that is basically, like you said, the constant is the temperature.
Right. So if it's interesting because things don't always change due to temperature. There's a lot of different chemistry based on light, but most people don't recognize that light chemistry and temperature chemistry have completely different mechanisms of how the chemistry happens. And I think that that's true in a lot of things in the world, that we experience one way, but there's actually 2 ways that work, a major way and a minor way. And if you happen onto the minor way before the major way and it works, there's no reason to switch to the major way when you figure it out, because the minor way still works. But then there are other ways that might work that are out of the ordinary. Right. And we really have to think outside the box to those out of the ordinary ways of doing things, because the major way and the minor way have both been corrupted by the system that enforces one way or the highway. And if you're not in the system, you're an enemy of the system, and there's no way to be neutral.
Okay, now with temperature, as the constant, there's actually going to be other variables, because when you were saying that, I was thinking about cooking. And up in this altitude, it would be different, even though where they made their other definitions or surveys or whatever you're talking, the groups.
Yeah, the 1-minute egg takes different amounts of time to actually cook, depending on your altitude. If you're trying to cook it in Denver, it'll take a little longer to get done than if you're trying to cook it down here.
So isn't that cool?
Yeah, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to hold as many of the variables constant so you can tease out which things have effects on other things.
That sounds like magic.
You do a whole bunch of these experiments to see what affects which in different directions, and then you set up your starting conditions. And if your starting conditions are set to give you the best possible outcome, you tend to get the best possible outcome. But if your starting conditions work against you, you're never going to get the outcome you expect because you didn't start from the right place. And mechanism is one of those things that things have to happen in a certain order. And if they don't happen in the right order, then you got to go back and start again.
Right.
Because if the order says you hitch up the horse to the wagon before you tell the horse to run, and you didn't hitch the wagon and you told the horse to run, oops.
Yeah, right.
Let's go get the horse, bring it back. And it's too many people have gotten to the idea that they don't have to work for the knowledge they have.
Really?
They get their knowledge by watching it in the movies or television or
YouTube.
Watching other people. YouTube, yeah. You can find out how to do anything on YouTube, and you watch people do it and you imitate what they do, and you can in fact duplicate what they do in a lot of circumstances. But how many people could get there without the guidance to get there?
Well, it's got to be the yin or the want or the curiosity that gets them there. And until we know that our
You broke up there, but it seems to me that we're on Bridgette's show and it's time for our break. So why don't we continue the conversation after the break?
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Hello, all you good-looking people out there in Revolution Radio. This is Mario. I invite you to join me Thursdays at 6 o'clock for This, That, and the Other. It's a show about you, it's a show about me, but ultimately it's a show where we try to have a little bit of fun. We discuss important topics, and we do our best to be apolitical. So I invite you, put on your favorite pair of comfy sweats, your smoking jacket, and grab a beverage of your choice, and join me Thursday evenings at 6 o'clock for This, That, and the Other on Revolution Radio.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
From the astral realms to the physical plane, the halls of power to the walls of home, the multiverse to the innerverse, all will be haunted by the ghost in the machine. I am Steve Zerloff, the ghost in the machine. Mondays, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Studio B. Exclusively here on Revolution.Radio.
It happens more often than we can imagine. In my case, I was sitting at home, and out of nowhere, I just started feeling uncomfortable. Then it got worse, and I started perspiring. I tried to ignore it, but I waited too long. The chest pain came as we were driving to the hospital emergency. I felt my life clock begin to tick. I barely survived. There was lots of damage done to my heart. What do I do now? I was lucky. I took a leap of faith and tried a 7-herb formula with hawthorn, garlic, cayenne, and more called Extendivite. Herbs have been used for thousands of years to keep us healthy. If you're not using Extendivite as a preventative supplement, maybe it's time to start. To order, call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com.
It's already 11:01.
Listeners supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
We shall see. Oh, yes, all good. Yep. Right over the opinion verse, but that's okay. That's the way it goes. We're just subbing here for our friend Bridgette. So, and we love that she's doing something productive for the planet. So I'm very happy to help keep this conversation going, because I had squash sprout, and I keep seeing new squash sprouting. But I don't know if there's something in the water or what, but there's a lot of plants having crinkling where they shouldn't be crinkling. So something is denying them a nutrient that normally they would receive. And I don't know how to figure that out. And the the tissues are different too.
I had one squash plant growing out of a compost pile, and then the next day it was gone, but that's because I have geese, and young plants and geese don't mix.
Oh, okay. Mine likes grass. He likes when I pick the grass before it gets mowed, like 3 times a week. Thank goodness it's a fast grass. But otherwise...
Well, I've one goose who's been on the nest now for over 3 weeks.
Nice.
I don't know exactly how long it takes for geese, but it should be soon.
Knowing in our chat says, Lenny, appreciate your style and light with a flashing thanks behind it. Cool. Yeah. Oh, I'm in chat. I like to make sure just in case anybody has anything to say, because that's the way it goes. And it's kind of interesting on Tuesdays and Wednesdays to sometimes remember to click back and forth, because it depends. This week was you were the only other person on my show this week.
Oh, okay.
And Wednesday, there was no show at all. And yesterday, I gave up an hour because Studio B was staticking so bad you couldn't hear me.
Yeah, I think the problem yesterday had to do with a CME off the sun last Sunday. And it takes about 5.5 days to get here, and it's a magnetic effect.
Right.
And it messed up all the electronics because I was having some serious problems with the station holding it and not holding it.
Well, somebody told me that the blast behind the one that we're receiving was massive. Massive.
But it went in a different direction and not towards
Earth. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank goodness. I was looking to see if I have that article, but I don't think I do. Oh, there's the glyphosate one. Yeah, it's just horrible that, things have to be so changed. I mean, literally. And then the artificial stuff you're seeing is just even more scarier. Go ahead.
The way to change things is to bring things back to human scale. And everything in our world is so far away from human scale that we're pushing and running ourselves as humans ragged. And we need to step back, analyze what it is we need, and work for ways of commonly getting what all humans need to every human, and then building from there.
Right.
And right now, the distribution of resources in the world is highly unbalanced. And the way resources get distributed is more by fiat than by anything else. And so the people who made the system and worked it benefit from the system. I think if we go back to human scale and local ownership of everything, we need a redistribution one time. But if we redistribute, we should have a different set of rules. And in fact, we can have a lot of different set of rules made by different groups, and you just had to buy into somebody's set of rules, not necessarily everybody buying into the same set of rules. That way the rules could be negotiated until we could get a good set of common rules. But right now, it's hard to understand what the rules are, especially with some people feeling the privilege of not being bound by them.
It just depends on who designs the rules. And what are the laws? No, we presume that we are, and we do. But there is,
because the government has laws for us, and these laws are made by consensual agreement, although I can't remember ever having been asked to consent to any laws. So we have a problem with our system of naming things and saying what things should be called, and we use words very, very badly.
Yeah.
Like when you get on my case, because I sometimes slip and call our children kids. But in fact, programming is that this is Animal Farm, and we've all read that book. And Animal Farm is a lot more realistic than 1984, but they want to point to 1984 to get people angry and divided. Whereas if we noticed Animal Farm, we'd realize that it's time to make bacon.
Okay.
Wait, isn't it true from Animal Farm that the pigs ran the shop?
I don't recall.
And whatever was written on the barn wall was the way it was?
No clue.
It's well worth people's time and energy to reread Animal Farm by George Orwell. It's a lot different spin from 1984, but it's the same stuff he's talking about. In fact, Fahrenheit 451 comes to mind also as another story telling the same story. And I think that the storylines of some of these old storylines are the current narrative that we're following as the game plan of society. And it's up to us each individually to change this narrative. And we can be in any narrative we can imagine. If we want to be Star Trek, we can be Star Trek. But right now, each of us has our own Truman Show. And if we can't get off the set and outside to see how things really work, we're going to be condemned to being the star of our own show in a very dull programming.
Yeah, boredom doesn't play well. But that's where people have gotten to because they can't recognize themselves as having any kind of abilities except to be slaves. I mean...
The way to beat the system is to create a system at human level, participate in it, and ignore systems that are not based on human level. So if we need entertainment, let's get some acting skills and entertain ourselves by appearing on things like radio and talking about things that other people can talk about because they heard us talking about and they agreed or disagreed with what we said. But at least we're here to say it because we're playing that role to be mouthpieces to get things out. But if we want to change things, the only thing you're capable of changing is yourself.
Right.
The only thing I'm capable of changing is myself. And we have a responsibility to each other to say, hey, I need to change. Can you help me? And it works. I think we get along pretty well. I think we have great shows when we get to talking. I don't think we always agree, but I think we agree that we don't have to agree.
Oh, it runs straight through my filtered mind. I live in the now, man. I deal with the now.
And I live in a now that is 52,000 years wide, 26,000 years on either side. So I have a lot more long-term perspective than most people I know. But by living so far out there, I'm at the opposite one from the one that we live in here. And have you ever read Walter Russell's book, The Universal One?
Not to my knowledge.
Walter Russell wrote that book back in the 1930s. And it's one of those books that really had me thinking when I read it year before last. And it was a difficult book for me to read because I'd read something and I'd have to think about it. And I'd read the same paragraph 4 different times and think about it. And where I was by the 4th time through was different from what he said when I first read it. And because they were such good wordsmiths, his building of the universal one taught me that there are 2 ones. There's the individual and there's the whole. And if you can't get a grasp on the whole as an individual, you're going to be stuck at one. And it's only after you've grasped yourself as an individual and the greater whole that it's time to build yourself up to 2. But things don't quite work like that, and we've got a lot of things to deal with. In the scale of 2, well, it's nice to be able to work on such a small scale. Okay. Most people work on bigger scales.
But I see the yin-yang when you say that, because that's a 1 symbol, and then you have the 2, but then you have the 2 of the 2, because they're each with a piece of the opposite, that it creates the balance.
And then you get up to 3, and that's the Trinity, and there's 2 to bounce off the 3rd pole, and if all is in agreement, you can even generate energy through a rotary engine.
I love 3. The me, myself, and I, the we of it all.
Yeah, I've started to include my higher self and my inner child with me, myself. It's a collection of 5. And I think the collection of 5 is wiser at decision making than just me, myself, and I. You should come to some of the committee meetings sometime, because higher self and inner child team up, and they only have to convince either me, myself, or I, and they get their way.
Well, my childhood wasn't very favorable.
So it's even
kind of interesting.
Be included in your decision making is because she's the one who has experience at knowing what you don't want. And even though your older other folks are more experienced and think they know what you want, if you always ask the inner child if it's okay, if it's really not okay, they'll tell you.
Right. Well, I think I've dealt with that. I know my child. I've always had bits and pieces of me that were basically knowing. But any kind of childhood, no. I don't even want to think of the kind of childhood I had. because I don't even exist in that delusion.
Well, it would be nice to return childhood to children these days. And I think finding an alternative form of information distribution than the education system is necessary, because that's like a minor prison. And
but the experiences, Lenny, actually taught me at the age of 26 that I had to trust my inner being, because it was the only thing that really knew. Because physically, by playing their role of knowing that I'm supposed to keep my mouth shut, and, oh, you can't do that even though you just sat down and played the piano, not like a child would, but as somebody who knew how to play piano, you can't do that. They told me to turn the record player off. So I allowed my experiences to show me who I am when that's not the facts of how and what we are. And until we can recognize to remove the childhood, anger, fear, regret, things like that, and accept that you have a better authentic self than what anybody has told you. I mean, people are assholes, and they treat children like they aren't human beings, and I didn't do that to any of my children. I never told them to shut up. I told them, now you might want to be quiet, or you need to listen, or something else like that. But I never just turned around and yelled at them, shut up! Because I didn't want it in return. It's really been the way that we've allowed others to model us into what they believe it is. That's taking life so personally, which is really, really wrong. So independence means a lot. Go ahead.
It's wrong. If you're taking anything that happens personally in the world, you're really wrong, because we're all just a figment of the numbers and the probability and the statistics. But the thing is that it really works in our advantage, not to our disadvantage. It's just that we've believed the system for so long that we really don't know how it works, and we haven't questioned it long enough that I pretty much know it doesn't work the way it was explained, but I have no idea how it actually works. I've got a few theories.
Right.
And my theories has to do with parallel and perpendicular universes. Everybody understands what a parallel universe is, right?
I would believe so.
Give me a quickie definition just so we're on the same page.
I'm sitting in front of a different model computer in a different realm, which would be like in between certain veils of sequences of realities through dimensionals.
Exactly.
Okay.
And what just happened when you were saying that was a hummingbird flew into my little room, said hello, and flew back out.
Aww. I love life.
Yeah. It's one of those things that you know you're on the right track when nature comes in and says, yeah, you're on the right track.
It means joy.
Yeah. And so a perpendicular universe is in which something happens to you as an individual by random chance that changes the whole structure of your life. Have a traffic accident and you really get banged up, so you didn't make it to the concert the next week where there was a massive shooting, so you didn't get killed.
Right.
And so the destiny on a whole bunch of those planets is all in the path where nothing happened and you continued on as was. But in that one individual universe that you experienced, life took a turn into the strange, and you cut a new path that was off the path of the trajectory that you had been on. So,
yeah, I've seen those portal realm splits, actually.
Right. So understanding that happens, if you get on one of those portal realm splits and it takes off to where your consciousness is in a completely different reality, you die in the reality that you left so that your consciousness doesn't have to carry that baggage in the new reality that's been created, that's a perpendicular line tangent to the parallel realities that were flowing. So let's go back to that concept of a major line and a minor line, where 60% of the time choice A happens and 40% of the time choice B happens. And it's a coin flip and you get either A or B. But now, for some reason, the coin has landed on its side and you have it so that it's neither A nor B, so possibility C can be introduced. That would be a perpendicular reality to A and B, but it might keep some of the parallelism to be on the same timeline because that's how it was initiated.
Okay, but parallelism, you're talking about on the same, basically, dimension to a degree. I mean, because you're not always in another realm. Because wouldn't another realm take more significant energy and wavelength than magnetic composures?
No,
that happen?
I think you're in all sorts of realms, but your consciousness is limited only to certain frequencies.
Okay.
And in any realm where you're on the frequency of the realm, you have a role to play on that realm. And in any realm where you're not on that frequency, you're an NPC. And your character goes about being part of society, but you're not thinking, you're not conscious, you're just doing what you were programmed to do. And
well, I think we're overburdened by those kind around here.
Yes, we very much are. We're in a world where in order to get here, you have to be at either a very high elevation or a very low elevation. You have to be in Zen in some way because you're either extremely grounded or you're extremely out there without grounding.
Hyper. Yeah, it'd be hyper.
Yeah. And so if you take the Fibonacci sequence and you approach it in both directions, starting from 1, when they meet in the middle, that's how many potential worlds there are that are the bridge between those two ones. And those two ones are a function of scale. And the whole thing has a twist to it, sort of like DNA, so that it goes from points to something that's fairly wide and then shrinks back to the next point. And so that happens over and over and over. How many people are in this world?
I haven't counted.
How many water molecules are in this world?
That also I have not counted.
How many water molecules are in a person?
No clue. It would depend on the person.
It depends on your weight.
Okay. Volume.
Absolutely. There are ways of calculating exactly how many water molecules are in your person based on your weight, based on the fact that a mole in chemistry is defined as 10 to the 23rd power. It's actually 6.023 times 10 to the 23rd. But when you're talking about 23 powers, you're talking 7 orders of magnitude away. And so we're talking number nonsense. Mathemagic.
Mathemagic.
Yeah, mathemagic is the math that Einstein used to create space and time. And now we're locked into it because some of the assumptions that he made were bought but some of the assumptions that he made were nothing like the assumptions he made because Einstein is a myth. And so are many of the other people who are major players in our history. Tell me how Shakespeare could have possibly had the experience to write all those plays in so many different, diverse areas.
Well, there have been, as long as the electronic and electricity wasn't around, I'm sure there was a lot of open, conscious thoughts. That's a good question, though. I mean, I cannot say yay or nay because I wasn't there. I'm only here right now witnessing.
Makes you think electricity wasn't around back then?
That's a good question. Oh, are you going to go mud fossil on us? Like you're going to have big old mud slides?
Look at some of the pictures that are coming out now of the lithotypes that are being released from the 1800s that have some of these mosques totally lit up before the invention of electricity.
Sweet.
You want the shape on top of a mosque isn't something that is set up specifically to be able to collect energy generated from, say, lightning or other ionic changes in the atmosphere.
I was just thinking vinegar batteries and I would love to know the science of being natural on this planet, more natural.
If you think about it and get deeper into what the pyramids are, if it was wet underneath the pyramids and not just the sand that is there in the desert where they are now, they would function as a capacitor, no problem, and be able to store electricity. Do we think the Egyptians could have possibly built those pyramids without being able to use electricity to make the precision of the cuts that allow the bricks to be stacked, especially considering that we don't have the technology now to build those?
Yeah, chariots of the gods.
So I question a lot of what we call history as being self-serving stories by the they part of the we-they duality.
Exactly.
But I believe that the we-they duality is a singularity. And when I say they did this to us, I mean we did this to ourselves, but it wasn't me personally. So let's all get back to the me personally stuff and take care of our own houses. And then when we're all okay that we know who we are and where we are, let's start some peaceful discussions on how to do this differently and get out of the mess that we have created.
Well, Lenny, it's also getting and being able to let others be themselves. Because there's OCD people there. I mean, there's people who would freak if it isn't just nonchalantly perfect or whatever, you know what I mean? So if others cannot take that personally too, that they feel this way, and you help them by setting an example to, like if somebody freaks out over spilt milk, okay? No, you just get the paper towels, don't slip on it, and go from there. You see what I'm saying?
Paper towels?
Or that rag's right there, napkins, yeah.
No. You take a real towel or a cloth and you mop it up with sponges and cloth and you do it in the wash and don't waste the resources. Nah.
Actually, not in this house.
We have had some very, very interesting conversations over the course of time with different people about whether to use paper products or not in cleaning things up. And it always comes to the same resolution. As soon as you break it into toilet paper, then there's a reason for paper. That's made of hemp.
Oh, everything can be made of hemp. That's why I'd really like to figure or know what the heck that property is going to be used for. Because there's so many different avenues to make off of one source. My goodness, business. I'd want to know every little nook and cranny because I remember running my greenhouses, but When I started, it was cactus and succulents, and I made all my own terracotta and other pottery of that nature. And basically, that was, God, almost 17 years. But about in the middle of that, when my children were growing up and the pink medicine kept coming out for earaches, I'm like, the universe, or God at that time, created something that was organic for us to use to heal, because this is our earth, right? Our home. And that's when books started falling off shelves in bookstores at me. Yes, you're supposed to learn all this that you can about herbs, and then. But I
here's
did
a meme for you.
Okay, and then now I lost what I was thinking.
We were talking about herbs and not thinking, but that's okay. I don't think either. I'm just gonna fire up another one. For those of you who might question it, I sent her a picture of a girl who looks a lot like Little Debbie, but she's got a joint coming out of her mouth, and it says Little Doobie.
Stay what? Baked? No, blazed?
Yes.
Stay BLAZED. What's it say underneath a Little Debbie? It's a little too small.
Stoner Days.
Oh, okay.
You just have to hit it and it expands to a full-size picture.
Yeah, but you save paper by using a bowl.
Yeah, I use a bowl, but that's because I never really learned how to roll a good joint.
I used to roll hundreds of them when my doctor friend would go to concerts and that and pass them out to people. But he hated the idea of being a doctor. He actually gave up his profession because of circumcisions.
Oh, good for him. My problem is that my fingers don't operate in tandem together, and I'm really spazzed to try and do things that require manual dexterity.
Okay. Yeah, they have rolling machines, though, too. But I'm real good manual dexterity.
I tried to pick ticks off Izzy the Wonder Dog yesterday.
Did what?
I was picking ticks off Izzy the Wonder Dog yesterday.
Okay.
And she was wiggling and squirming, and I just couldn't grab the little buggers. But every day now I have to go and check her for ticks and get them off.
What you need are matches. And put the match on the tick and let it, you don't do it on fire, but you light the match, you stick the hot on the tick, and it supposedly gets out of the dog, head and all, because you don't want to just pluck off and leave the head. You know ticks, right?
Yeah, I tend to pull them off and then check and see if I've left the head, and if I have left the head, then pull the head off too. But the thing is that if I were trying to use matches with Izzy the Wonder Dog, she's 65 pounds of pit bull, and she doesn't like fire, and she wiggles and squirms. So I get her calmed down. I can pick 15, 20 ticks off in about 2 minutes, whereas if I was playing with the matches...
Are you checking yourself, I hope?
Oh, absolutely. I pull ticks off me all the time.
Oh, my.
I easily can feel them. Mm-hmm. Every so often I have one that makes it on an overnight, and I end up with some sort of a tick infection, but I've gotten used to it enough over the years that I am immune to tick diseases.
Huh.
It's one of those things with eating mushrooms also. I can probably eat a lot more mushrooms than somebody who has no response to mushrooms because they haven't been eating them a lot.
Right.
I know which ones are edible and which ones are hallucinogenic and which ones are not edible. And the ones that are not edible are usually not edible because they're hallucinogenic, not because they're not edible.
Right. Comprende.
Yeah, and so if you're going to go for Amanita muscaris, the red one with the dots that they say is the really, really way out there one, you're playing with poison, and it's a near-death experience.
Oh,
and that's
peyote. It's strychnine with peyote. They have to go through all that withdrawals and. Oh, I wouldn't want to even do ayahuasca. No thanks.
It's a matter of who's preparing it and how clean it is and what you're doing for it. But of the different drugs, anything that's an upper or downer, I don't go anywhere near. Anything that's a hallucinogen, I like to try, but I prefer it natural rather than processed. So ayahuasca was much better than like the 7-MeO DMT.
Right.
And the DMT experience was way different. But to tell you the truth, I didn't enjoy the DMT experience near as much as I enjoy the experiences where I actually participate in the experience.
I laughed so 8 hours straight. I couldn't stop laughing. Chased the housemates out of the house. The last sugar cube I did in Florida. It was so funny. And I mean, I'm like, oh my gosh. I probably gave myself a hernia and didn't know it. But
yeah, the weirdest time I had on drugs. This is a great story. I was riding around with my friend. I'm in the passenger seat. We're in a one of those rental vans, going to a unit where he had stuff in storage to start moving them. And so I was digging in my backpack looking for a bowl to smoke some pot that we had out of. And I found a bowl, and I didn't remember that I had used it for DMT in the past.
Jiminy crickets.
And I loaded it with marijuana, thinking I was just taking a normal marijuana hit. And it was laced with DMT, and I went into like a 5-minute loss of reality. If I had been the driver of the vehicle and had done it the way I normally do hits when I'm driving, there is absolutely no way I would have been alive. But I was in the passenger seat, and I just totally checked out. And my friend who was driving had pulled over to the side next to the storage unit to wait for me to come back into reality, because I would have been absolutely no help to him in the conscious state that I was.
Yes.
But I was way out there.
The DMT is natural, right?
DMT is natural in that your mind makes DMT
right.
Quantity. But the drug that you get on the street called DMT, my theory on drugs on the street are you never know what you're getting, and no matter what somebody gives you and calls it, if you don't know what it is and haven't done it before, you're willing to accept it at face value and call it what they told you it was.
Right.
Just the strains of marijuana. Hey, this is good train wreck. You should try some. And it's the very same strain as somebody else is calling Arctic Ice, which is the very same strain as yada, yada, and yada. But people make up their own names because it sounds cool. And the retail stores want different names for their stuff. I got Maui Zowie. Remember when Maui Zowie was really good stuff that you could buy from other types? And then there was Thai stick that came wrapped with a little hair around it, and you had to unweave the hair in order to get at the marijuana. I wonder what those Thai sticks were laced with.
Oh, good question.
I'm convinced now that a lot of the marijuana that we were smoking in the 70s was laced, but we didn't know it because nobody had real experience with it, and that was just what you were able to get. But I never smoked the Mexican, the ditchweed. I never needed to because I didn't start smoking till I had gone to school, and the school where I went They didn't need to. They didn't provide Mexican. They had much better access to different stuff. But college is there to teach people how to use drugs, and that's the only reason to go to college.
No, I got my BA.
You're lucky. Most people have a BS and mastered the bullshit.
Oh, my daughter has a BS, but she's not mastered the bullshit. She did get a bachelor's of science.
I have PhD. It means I'm piled higher and deeper.
But yeah, it didn't keep me in educating others. And my commercial art, I just couldn't lie. The system just is such a bunch of lies. And this was all in the late 70s. And what was the other thing? There was something else, but I forgot.
Late 70s were a real tough time.
Oh, my architecture degree. They wouldn't let me go to carpentry class so I could get an extra piece of why I got my architecture degree. There was female social, or what do you call them? They were male chauvinist pigs is what they were. The universe kept making it where I wasn't supposed to go those routes for some reason. So.
You wouldn't have been a feral hippie if you did, but in some reality, you did go those routes and met with resistance and persevered through it and became a person that was whatever your person at that time had intended for you. But it's one of those things where every time you come to a key decision point in your life, you make a coin flip. And you get either heads or tails, and you go whichever direction the path takes.
Now you get the side. Sometimes it stands up on its side. Come on, there's availability. You remember, it's always a threesome, babe.
Yeah, but let's say we flip it 100 times. We'll get 99 times when it doesn't land on its side. And the one time it lands on its side, that's a tangent. But for the other 99 times, it's going to be broken up 59 to 40 to 37. And then there'll be a couple others that are a little different. And by being in a consciousness that cultivates the little different, you can tease out more value in it. But if the decision ultimately didn't make sense, you end up in the same timeline. And if your general morphology is in a timeline, you go to bed at night, you wake up, you're in the same timeline as you went to sleep with. And even if it's parallel, it seems close enough. But if you're in a perpendicular timeline, you either lose track of that consciousness or you need to lose track of the old consciousness. So I think death comes about to take you out of the old consciousness just so that you can live in your new consciousness, and all those people who are in your old consciousness don't bother you in your new consciousness because you're dead within their consciousness.
Well, all right. Unwitnessed, unseen, unthought about.
Yeah.
Things like that.
So it gives you freedom to go into tangent realities where your consciousness is enjoying themselves. But in reality, you're going on as an NPC in some of those realities because the event that happened never happened to trigger you into the catalyzed reality.
Oh, so I became the chauvinist pig, is that it?
Perhaps you got so far over the deep end that you were a feminist advocate and some chauvinist pig shot you.
Oh, well. I used to make this terracotta, it wasn't a terracotta piece, but it was a pig in a biker's outfit, the cute little cap and the T-shirt and the jeans. And I used to cut his belly out and stick a cactus for, and it had MCP on it, male chauvinist pig. I could sell those in the bar with the Pancho Villas and the cactus. I mean, gosh, it's funny, but it's not. Everything was penis, but those cactus would have hurt. Anyway, go ahead.
I'm going to send you another picture of a visitor who came by here the other day.
The snake?
Yep.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to find it and send it to you, and I did. And so it should be appearing on the screen any moment. I'm no longer certain that Skype works, but I know it works to service Microsoft, and how Skype works.
Right.
It's one of those things that it hasn't been working properly for long enough that I expect it to work, but improperly.
Right. I get that. I totally get that. My gosh, it's pouring here. Thunder.
Skies for like the 5th or 6th day in a row. And I've been looking at my little tiny marijuana plants and thinking that the eggshell experiment was not a very good idea because it has stunted the early growth of the plants, but I'll let it go anyway because I have enough that I didn't plant in eggshells that I should be able to get 3 or 4 female plants this year.
Cool.
And so we're probably another 10 days out before I feel comfortable putting them in the ground. But in order to put them in the ground, I got to find a place where they're out of sight and mind of the geese, but yet convenient for me to water every day.
Right.
And also have full sun. And since we have the hemp field going in nearly the same time, I think that rather than planting where I have planted the last couple of years, I'm going to move to a place in the forest where it seems to have consistent water flow nearby. And if it doesn't, and that little stream that feeds into the river dries up, the river is close enough that I can just bucket haul some water.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to find a place there near the water that has enough open sunlight that the plants get as much sun as possible.
Right.
Because it doesn't pay to grow marijuana plants in the shade.
No.
So I'm on scouting mission time right now. And I'm in a portion of the property where I haven't done a lot of scouting. So me and Izzy the Wonder Dog are getting out and having some fun.
Well, get an early full sun, not a late full sun, because I swear the stuff around here is dehydrating a whole lot faster than it should be. Or evaporating, I mean.
That could be.
Well, yeah. Well, I don't even want to be in it. Because I end up with blisters on me. And I don't like blisters. So
What color is your sun? Is it white or yellow?
I haven't looked at it today because it's raining, so
yeah.
I don't trust the color of the sun to be but orange, but we have so many atmospheric layers of bull crap in there. That's why it's white. The sun isn't going to change its color. Its molecular structure is its molecular structure. It's our witnessing it through dirty flipping skies. There you are. I had to say.
It is thanks to strategic aerosol spraying,
Right.
which we know is chemtrails. But because we call it chemtrails, we can be written off by the mass of the public who thinks that because we use a word differently than the way they've been taught, we must be insane idiots.
But that's okay. I've been an idiot all my life, and I don't mind.
I prefer to use the term idiot myself. I'm an idiot.
That's right.
You better explain that to me because I'm just an idiot.
Well, it is rather amazing because that's why I give everybody the benefit of the doubt. And I try to keep it simple because I don't want to confuse anybody. But there are moments that I don't have to have it simple. I might not be able to say completely out and read all those long words and do stuff like that, but I comprehend. I comprehend a lot. I see things that people don't and would not even be able to fathom to be seen.
Well, I sent you a picture of the river, and a little further down the river that's not in the picture.
Oh, that's cool.
Log jam. And so I'm going to take some pictures of the log jam as soon as the river is warm enough that I can take off my shoes and go out and walk in the river, because I can't get down to where the log jam is unless I'm walking in the river from the direction I'm coming in.
I know, but I see that sunny spot right there.
Yep. Depends on
Two
the
of
time.
them, actually, yeah.
Where the sunny spot is. And a lot of that is because that's actually rough whitewater also.
Neat.
And the sun is going on the whitewater as opposed to the calm water that you can see.
Exactly. Sweet.
And you can see on the left of the picture, there's a log hung up in the water. And that's only because, as soon as the flow gets up, that log will shift down and get caught in the bigger log jam. But I was watching last year, and we got a tree that had a big bolus that was ripped out that was sitting in the river, and it didn't get pushed out. And so it was catching other things. And the head of the tree was stuck in some trees on the outside, so that it had to break the tree to push past. So I figured that the beavers will love it. And we have beavers around here, so I'm going to get a picture of the beavers this year.
Yes, I knew a family of otters across the street in the neighborhood pond, but they left because the water came in from the Gulf of Mexico, the inlets and all that, and went back out. So we used to live on a tidal pond, but when you spray this new true stuff on the grass and all that to make your grass all societally welcome or something, they just, I don't like chemicals whatsoever of that nature that they know it's going to do harm and they don't care. Otters are so cool. I like beavers too. I mean, there's no critter I don't really not like.
One of the things I've learned in resonating with critters outside more than people is that I'm in a ground state now where the critters don't run away from me at first blush.
Mm-hmm.
They know me and expect me to be there, as opposed to fearing that I'm something that's out of place. And I think that's a good place for human nature to be, is for the human nature to be able to not scare the nature and not scare the humans.
Mm-hmm.
But most humans scare the heck out of me. And I don't know how to deal with humans. But I do know that any human who's listening to this who wants to listen to my radio program, it's on Steampunk Radio, Monday through Friday at 7 a.m. local, 10 o'clock Eastern, 3 o'clock in the afternoon in Great Britain. And we have an international chat room audience through the Discord server. And I broadcast on Steampunk Radio, which is on everybody's TuneIn app. So when I listen to Revolution Radio, I also listen to Revolution Radio on the TuneIn app. And the TuneIn app gets you all sorts of podcasts and different things. So if you don't have the TuneIn app, it's a free app. And
cool.
Also find me on steamit.com. if they want to read some stuff that I write.
Oh, and I'm on Studio B 2 to 4, Monday through Friday. Adventures of a Feral Hippie. Hippie. Yeah, I know, right? That was the station owner's choice of words, and I had the best promo ever. So, yes.
How come your promo doesn't play on Bridgette's show and Bridgette's promo doesn't play on your show?
Because the man is smart and he knows how to keep us separated.
But, you know, the cross audience would probably be good, because I think that we're all talking about the same thing, and that's taking the radio and using it to speak your mind, because it's one of the last bastions of freedom, and they can't regulate what we say on the radio because it's live and you get it real. And if you don't think you heard it right, you can listen to it again on replay on a podcast.
Well, do the archives, yeah. I don't know if you can podcast on TuneIn, but oh gosh, yes. Don't forget we're listener supported. There are archives. We have seed packs. I'm going to go to Cherokee and do some casinoing for my 65th birthday. So,
yay!
Hey, I'm going to play the odds. You know, I live 3D, even though I know there's other D's behind it.
Tell me which game you're going to play, and I'll look into it, and I'll at least explain you the odds before you go play it.
Well, it'll be usually the slots. I don't play card games in that because I'm just putting everything up to chance, not up to using my brain. Okay?
You see, when I go, I play roulette, and I watch the ball spin, and it's always entertaining.
I want to push buttons, man.
Okay, I'll push your buttons next week sometime, either
All
Wednesday
right.
or Thursday.
Great.
Hey, everybody in the audience, you have a great and pleasant rest of your weekend.
There you go. Thank you, Lenny. All right, so it's a different time frame here with this. I mean, it's kind of funny because I haven't heard the promos. There it is. I'm trying to... We should be out of the rain because it just downpoured. I bet we just got 3 inches. There we go. Hugs and bubbles. Later.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. Welcome to Revolution Radio, where you, the listeners, are in charge. Here at Revolution Radio, we present 48 broadcast hours of news and information each and every day. Revolution Radio never sleeps. Revolution Radio is worldwide and borderless information. Revolution Radio is also commercial-free. Revolution Radio is supported 100% by you, the listeners. And that's why we appeal to you to donate and support this station and its expenses. You can support us in many available options like archive subscriptions, our seed pack selections, or even my woodworking store. And we also even have Revolution Radio's swag at the Revolution Radio Zazzle store, in which you can get t-shirts, coffee cups, even a baby onesie. Or you can just plain donate to the cause. We cannot continue without your support, and your support is what helps pay the bills. So please, if you wish us to continue, please stop by our station support page and drop a dime on us. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps. Is your data safe? Do you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation? Is survival and gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands where you know where it is. Well, check out our preloaded EMP-proof thumb drive. Over 3 gigs of survival documents and how-tos, plus the USDA offline food preservation website, and much, much more, including a surprise bonus we just can't tell you about here. With plenty of room left over to store your most important documents. Imagine if a megavirus or a computer failure took out your bank or all the banks